Alright guys, we're tuning in here for the eekarf versus Lichess Master allyouneedisluft Crazyhouse World Championship match. And just a disclaimer, this video is going to be quite short. I'm only able to catch maybe 20 or 30 minutes of this depending on my other engagements. So I'm just going to record however much of this as I can, so we have something rather than nothing. And hopefully I'll be able to see the whole match. That would be ideal, but we'll see how fast they play and how many matches we get through. So yeah, just waiting for these two players to start right now. We have 12 spectators. I'm sure that'll climb steadily. We've got International Master Opera Wiesen, also a candidate. In the spectators, we've got 12-teen. And then in the spectators, 12-teen has just yesterday secured himself the first of 2 spots in the final championship round. So he has 5.5 out of 6 points right now, does 12-teen. And actually only a few players are contesting for the second spot there. So anyway, let's focus on the players we have at hand, eekarf and allyouneedisluft. Allyouneedisluft starting with e4. We got the 4 knights. And eekarf going for this asymmetric stuff right off the bat with e4 and d5. All right. We'll see how much these two players have prepared against each other. Let me just make sure everything's up and running. That looks like we're all set here. And the knight hops into f4. This is all pretty well-trod territory here. And the e4, d5 structures. d4 attacking this knight. The knight's going to sack on g2. And I think this is actually a little bit better for white if he can defend precisely. But it's not, I can tell you firsthand, it's not easy to defend this precisely. So now, where does this knight want to go? Do you want to be aggressive and move forward? You're also going to be, this pawn will be a little bit tender once this defender is removed. Or do you want to come back and just eye these 2 squares, the light squares, which have been made weak by this sack on g2? So it does come back to u1. King can just step back here. Or if you really want to, you can sack or take here twice. And you'd have to take with the king, though, because if the queen takes, you have the knight check. So he just decides to step back. I think that's correct. And now you'd like to be able to undermine this or exploit this pin somehow, or maybe even progress on the king side with it, like a knight h5. Maybe knight here is best. It hits both this and the g4 square, trying to undermine this pawn chain. Allyouneedisluft is playing rather slowly, though, trying to navigate through this complex middle game. He's down a minute on the clock already. So we've got an exchange on c3. eekarf has a knight in hand. We can place out on h3. The king will go to h1, but black doesn't have another pawn in hand. And this knight defends this square from a pawn drop in the future. White's king is not terribly comfortable, no, but there's no immediate threat on it. So now you're blocking this pin, and now this knight can become mobile. So white has to relieve the tension here somehow with this knight. So he removes this knight out of dodge and takes. Okay, that's probably wise. Probably want to take here. He's debating whether the queen or the knight should take. And if it were me, okay, yeah, the queen takes. I can move to g4 perhaps, or to centralize it. Goes to h3. Okay, still on a light square. And eventually you'd like to patch up with a pawn at g2. But that's not such a pressing concern. Maybe you progress with your own attack. So how does black even progress here? Black doesn't have a ready plan, whereas white has pretty standard moves to make. Wants to kick this knight away, put a pawn on g3, exploit this pin somehow, and I like white here. I think I like white. Bishop here, actually, I do like this e5 move. It's a little bit liberating here, and now black is going to get some tempo. Bishop here, or not. Actually, this pawn is hanging, isn't it? So maybe you need to address that first. But then that could relinquish some of the tempo here, the initiative rather. So yeah, if you're black, maybe bishop here is fine, because if takes, then you have a knight drop here, and yeah, so that's what he's calculating right now. Bishop here instead. So it doesn't directly attack the queen, but it does defend this and cut across this extremely important diagonal here, the long diagonal against white's king. So a knight here is the mate threat. It's the immediate. Actually, no, the queen does cover that nicely on g4, but 2 knights in hand would be mate on these squares. So okay, queen trade is going to happen. Now you've removed this defender. So yeah, all you need is left is covering the first knight check, mate threat. Now he's going to have to... never mind, just disregard everything I'm saying right now, because this bishop covers that square, so he has both of these squares covered. He doesn't really need to worry about that too much right now. And he does have a lot of coverage on these light squares, which is the avenue via which black is attacking the light squares. So knight here can do sidesteps, you're safe. Bishop takes, you can play some knight checks on or just recapture and you're safe. I think white's safe here. So now, knight c5 is probably indicated here. Yeah, knight c5. So where does the king step? King steps to e7. If queen here, king just steps back. Pawn on, that can be taken. Maybe queen here, and then you take this knight first. Yeah, so, I mean, maybe you just bring this bishop out first. That's probably a good start. Okay, I would say bring this bishop out first just to connect the rooks, if nothing else, and block off this square. Even though that's not terribly important. More, you just want to get this bishop out with tempo. So maybe you could have inserted this as an intermezzo before capturing here, placing queen on or anything, but not convinced about this capture first, honestly, because now the bishop controls this square, which you would like to come in on. Okay, so we've got a capture there. Now, bishop here, blocking off this diagonal. You do have a knight check and the king sidesteps, but you have 2 pieces on this, although this bishop will ultimately open up along that diagonal, so it's really sharp here, and all he needs left has only 10 seconds to navigate these complications. Can he do it? White resigns. Oh, he just missed a smother mate. King h1, queen g1 there. Rook takes and knight takes f2, smother mate. Wow. Okay, so first game goes to eekarf there. Nicely done from eekarf. All you need is left is ranked, or seated rather, number 2 in the standings. Not in the standings, I should say. In the standings, he's fairly low, I want to say, but and the just entrance seedings, he was number 2. But eekarf, nonetheless, taking that first game off him. So we have this e4, e5 opening. All you need is left playing in symmetrical fashion here. It's something of an offbeat variation of the main lines, it looks like. This bishop is nicely covering the g7 square and guarding the f4 pawn from future attacks, also keeping an eye on this square. So yeah, Black's pretty comfortable along the dark squares rather here. These knights are also contesting the dark squares, but Black should have enough coverage. So how does Black proceed? Do you want to play pawn at h3 or maybe pawn at g4? Getting 2 adjacent pawns, again, side by side is a pretty powerful combination there. Okay, he's going to progress here on e3 with this little diagonal battery he has going here. I'm trying to soften up this f2 square. So now, yeah, this is actually, I mean, not immediately dangerous, but in the long term it can be. Because if you get multiple diagonal pieces in hand, pawns in hand, which you can accomplish with moves like c6, then you can start dropping on f2 and h3. And then when you're coming in on both these color complexes, it'll be a little bit dangerous for White's king. But again, nothing White needs to immediately be concerned about. So in the meantime, okay, knight h5. All these knights are on light squares, meaning they're all attacking dark squares. So all you need is left, rather than placing a pawn at h3, going for the direct approach, it's just going to develop and hit this knight and ask it what it wants to do. So do you want to defend that knight, or do you want to go all out and sack on g7? It doesn't seem terribly prudent to sack here on g7. It just seems like a piece for a pawn to me, because again, he has a lot of coverage along the dark squares. So he is electing just to defend that, but now you're going to lose some material here. Pawn at f4 is a nice way to kick this defender of this piece. This piece is under fire, this piece is under fire, and you can't save both. So, and maybe not the most precise play from eekarf here. I like Black here. Okay, so if you want to, you can just take here and then take here and get your piece. And he does just that. Okay, so black is now up a little bit of material, and the position has more or less stabilized. So yeah, advantage to black here. Nothing overwhelming, but a certain material advantage to black. This bishop is nicely guarding this diagonal from future drops here, and also bearing down on g7. So it's a nice spot for this bishop, and now all you need is left doesn't want it to just stay there in perpetuity, so he's asking the question to it immediately. Where do you want to go? Get off this diagonal. eekarf with a knight in hand. He's going to have to expend a tempo on moving that bishop out of dodge there. And now e5. This knight, that's a nice square for that knight as well. Blocking this diagonal and secured by this pawn. That's a nice place for that knight. These two knights side by side are also covering a lot of squares here. If we can do the little octopus thing here, these double knights. Alright, so what's the idea here? Where do you want to place that knight? White rather might be considering using this bishop, although again doesn't lead to much, so yeah, just going to recapture. Knight removes itself from the f5 square, and now you're attacking g2, which is no longer defended by this light square bishop. And white is trying to scrounge up some counterplay here. So do you want to sack here? Maybe. Instead, he's going to take here and open up this this file for the rooks. And if the rooks come off, that white has a little bit of play. So if the rooks come off, who does it benefit here? Okay, so all he needs left grabs a knight for that rook instead of just exchanging the rooks directly. Now you can play pawn at f2. The king sidesteps. The difference is that instead of having another rook in hand, you don't have a rook to place here. You have a knight instead. So maybe taking here is possible. You always have to be worried about or be on the lookout for some smothered ideas if you're black. But white doesn't have a knight in hand, so that's okay right now. He does now. So yeah, now you have to calculate things like and guard after knight at f7, king there, rook there, mate. So that's what this bishop move is all about, guarding that square. So now you have to take that. Now 14 seconds to 14 seconds. It's going to come down to the wire here. Both sides have chances. eekarf with a pocket brimming with material here, but how does he use it? Can he use it? Can he get it on the board in time? Queen here, you're looking to pile up on this file and to get a rook at f8 drop in. Yeah, maybe this knight move. I'm not sure about that, so you want to block that off. Rook takes, and this square is still vacant. Or still occupied, rather, so there's no smothered. Now he's just going to throw in some desperado checks there, so it doesn't get flagged, but it gets flagged nonetheless. And second game goes to all you need is love, 1-1. Both players on the scoreboard, and both players scoring with the black pieces. So 1-1, we're going to go down the same line as before, it seems. Let's see where either player decides to deviate. Looks like we already have a little bit of a deviation here. So instead of an immediate bishop b5 pinning this knight up, goes for a d4, and we're going to have a very open position here shortly. Okay, so instead of exchanging here, you're just pushing past for space. It's still a fairly open position, though. So if you want, you can, take on c6 there. The queens will come off, but the knight covers the square from a sack. Could have taken with the king too, I think. All right, maybe bishop here, but that can just be blocked off with the pawn at f6. Instead, knight at e4. That's a nice move. Yeah, attacking this bishop, just kind of overprotecting this square. And this knight is also well positioned for future attacks, possibly on the f6 square. Okay, so do you want to take that? Doesn't necessarily lead to much, although this square will be vacated, and you can maybe drop a queen there and cause black some moderate discomfort. Instead, you're going to develop this and just threaten mate, but that's just easily blocked off the pawn on this diagonal. Okay, and now, so if you take here, you can't take with the e-pawn because this square must remain covered from a queen drop. So takes, and then queen on here, threatening c6 now. Left decides that's not really leading to much and just develops the knight instead, e3. Got a nice little central mass of knights. And knight on. The knight now covers this square. Also attacks the bishop. So it's a versatile piece there on e6. Alright, eekarf is electing not to use these pawns in any sort of aggressive manner. He's just trying to get super solid and construct something of a fortress around his king there in the center of the board. And now that he's done so, with his little massive pawns in the center, he's going to activate his pieces. Knight coming in from e6, he's done his job guarding this square, is going to come into this nice little pocket here on f4. And also liberate this bishop, where before it was blocking it on e6. It's going to just develop to d7, securing some more territory, especially the c6 square. Okay, so yeah, we just have a position here. Both sides have dropped their pieces, mostly in the center of the board, and both sides still have a queen in hand, which have remained in hand since pretty much the beginning of the game. Neither player finding the perfect spot to place that piece just yet. All right, now it's a battle of the knights versus the bishops. So the first things you want to look at is like takes, and then sack here. But that all then black can counter sack. So yeah, instead of taking here, he's just going to block up this diagonal. And, okay, so that was an interesting occurrence there. I'm not sure who those traits benefited really, but now both players have more pieces in hand and can reposition them as they see fit. Okay, black isn't threatening anything immediate, so maybe a knight at h5. Well, so he's gonna just develop and kick this knight. Although you can take one of these two squares. Yeah, and that's a little bit dangerous. I'm not sure whether you should have allowed that. Like knight h5 would have presented your own threat, because then you're threatening to take on g7, and I don't think he has the time to take here. But now this piece can't really be taken, because then you have a pawn drop or bishop drop on this square. So now he's going to get his queen into play, but yeah, a little bit too late. Look at the time situation as well. That's something I wasn't really paying or keeping track of. And Luft is now below 10 seconds. eekarf with a very safe king, and a better position, I would hazard to say. And yeah, bishop takes, king h1. This is over. Just poor time management, I think, from Luft. Yeah, this is just nasty. Bishop takes. Now pawn here is an immediate mate threat. Takes. You can just drop the bishop back, or you can place pawn on, or even queen on. It's over. Left with no time to defend here, and you need eekarf for the winning position anyway. So eekarf takes the second game there. I think all games have been won with the black pieces so far, which is quite interesting. The black player both players doing a good job of preparing lines and with black, it seems. So now we're going down again a slightly offbeat variation of the main lines, the main e4, e5 lines with bishop e2 and bishop e7 symmetrical situation here, which I think is the line that was played previously. Score 2-1 eekarf, as the chat is pointing out. All right, so do you want to take here? Rook takes, and then proceed on the light squares. Takes, pawn on, no. So you're just going to back off and admit that the sack wasn't working. It might have been working, might have been worth a shot, but eekarf declines and just wants to hold on to that knight, which is also a perfectly viable way of playing as well. So now Now these two squares are tender, and who can get in first is the question. Still rather symmetrical. White is going to get in first, it seems. So you probably want to take this, and then maybe you can even place pawn here of your own. The difference here actually, and this is important I think, is that the king is on f1 if you're white, and the king is on g8 if you're black. So a pawn here, that will be taken with check. So this will come with tempo, whereas taking here on g7 does not. So rook here. Or do you want to play pawn here first and just see how white addresses this? And maybe the rook will be more useful here directly on the king. I would play pawn here. You always have rook here if you want it. Alright guys, I'm going to have to take this phone call and cut off the recording here.